Hello. So today we are going to go over the top 5 3-cost rerolls with a little bit of a guide after basically the first week of the patch being out. So I plan to do like little updates, so usually patch note reviews every time there's a patch note. I used to do that on this channel, as well as just sometimes if there's like really dominant meta strats that I'll kind of talk over it or talk about it basically. So first things first. Patch note. So I want to do a patch note review. There's a very small B patch, so in case you didn't see it, basically they just slightly nerfed Mythic, or I can zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. They slightly nerfed Mythic, which wasn't that big of a nerf. I don't think it really changes anything. The big changes were some of the augments that were really busted, and some of them that were really weak got changed. So sharing is caring, gold is down, built diff, they made it a little slight nerf. If you haven't tried a built diff comp, I did. It was very strong, and you should always just like kind of know how to play around like specific like easily top 4able augments and stuff like that. I'll do a guide on it when I get to that video review. Drop Blossom might be broken now. I don't know. Last time I tried it was when it was shit, so you know it didn't get uploaded on YouTube. And then Apoc, Extended Duel, Lucky Ricochet, all of these ones that are really dominant around certain reroll comps that I'm going to talk about in this video, they are slight nerfed. And then it was mostly, the main reason for the patch was bug fixes. Like, I thought they fixed this Irelia bug, but apparently it was still in the game, so like, thank God they fixed it, because I'm playing Irelia thinking that it was fixed. But yep, just some quality of life stuff. Next thing, as part of the update section at the beginning, thank you for 120 subscribers. We had a big influx of new subs. If you're watching this video and you're new sub, welcome. Chicken Boss, I won't forget you if this counts as being famous right now. The sub goal for 100 subs was to play Ari Yasuo reroll. So now it's actually turning out that it's a really strong comp. So like once I figure out, like once I have a spot for it, I'll play it and I'll post the video. I tried it forcing it like before for the sub goal, and I just went 5th, so I think it would be more insightful if I played it properly. So as soon as I get dropped a bunch of Aries and Yasuos, I'll play it. The next sub goal is RP at 200 subs, so make sure to tell your friends to sub, because you know I'm gonna give away maybe like $5 or $10 to one lucky subscriber. Okay, let's start with this. So this was my old tier list, just talking about 3 costs and like what rerolls. I was kind of like pretty close, right? I think it's more so like Bard is clearly the best, and then like everything is like kind of like over here, and Zoe is probably a little bit lower, and all these other ones are like kind of like not really, doesn't like in terms of like 3 costs, these are like, this is the list, but in terms of rerolls, it's more like these ones, right? Which is what we're going to go over today. Volibear, and then like Zoe's like somewhere here, or even here. So first one, I'm not going to go too much in depth with this one, but the number 5 comp that we're going to talk about is Zoe reroll. Zoe's like right behind my head in this picture, which kind of sucks. So there's not much to know about it. You can just play it as like Vertical Arcanist, as well as like vertical. You can also play it like in this kind of mixed board where you have you're playing towards like Dragon Lords and you're playing towards like Dragon Lord, Altura, Sage, like that comp, and then you just have like the Zoe 3 in there. These 2 pictures, the first one was from Gunmay's set 11 cheat sheet, and then this is TFT Academy, which is Dishop and Froden's new website. I'm not going to talk about this one too much because I haven't played it first-hand experience, so I don't know how strong it is. It seems pretty strong, but the biggest problem is like actually finding Zoe, because like so many people hold on to this unit playing Storyweaver that it's very hard to have like an AP spot where you have a bunch of Zoes, where it's not just better to level to 8 to try and fast 9 to play around like some of the stronger boards. Like for example here, like a lot of the fast 9 boards, like playing around Hue and playing around like Storyweavers, or playing around just like Irelia with Away thrown in. It's like it's just better to like level in a lot of cases, so it's kind of like an opportunity cost. So it's really hard to like, you know, find this unit and have a bunch of them and like make the rational decision to say, okay, I will play towards Zoe and Soraka dual carry with a Diana frontline instead. But you know, if the time comes, I will be trying it out. Like if I have like what's it called, the this first augment 2 for 1 and people are taking other 3 costs, maybe there's a spot for it. But now we get into the real tier list, so it's more like a top 4. The number 4 comp, so number 4 here would be Aphelios reroll. So Aphelios reroll is actually very, very strong. Basically what you're playing is you're playing around Aphelios Thresh, and then your front line you kind of put the Alawi Amumu, so it's pretty much playing Sniper Flex except you roll for the Aphelios 3. I kind of like this comp in PBE and I thought it was pretty strong. I think there's at least one video that I did with it. With Aphelios, the items are kind of awkward. We'll talk about items a little bit after, but basically the reason this comp is number 5 is because you could almost never rationalize playing Aphelios reroll in spots unless like it's really uncontested and you have like a lot of natural Aphelioses, right? If you can't really decide at the start of the game, I'm going Aphelios reroll, because the thing is like faded. So this is like a 3 faded comp. The 7 faded comp, like fast 9 or fast 8 into 7 faded playing around Syndra, is like really, really strong because the bump that you get from 7 faded is like an S tier comp. It's like you're playing for first at that point. So you really want to hit the point where you have 7 faded either by emblem or by natural units, meaning that you want to level to like 9 and play and find a set so that you can get that 7 faded bonus. Why this comp works really well is because you're really stable at 2-star Aphelios with items. You can play around the Aphelios and you can use that to tempo higher. If you happen across a bunch of Aphelioses, then you can commit to the Aphelios reroll and still like, okay, now I can play like 2-star Syndra and a set and level up, and I have a free Aphelios 3 that will just do most of my damage until I get to 7 faded and like actually wipe the whole board. The problem with this comp is that like it's hard to hit all these units because a lot of people will angle towards faded and Syndra, as well as like grabbing sets and grabbing like high cost units. But if you do have a faded +1, you can play flex, you can play towards the Aphelios, build Aphelios items, and then if you don't hit Aphelios 3, you can carry Aphelios 2 until you have Syndra items, and kind of like tempo it into a level 9 and not commit to the 3 cost, which is what makes it really strong. The items I put are the items I usually build on it. I usually pick items using like tactics .tools. It's not like the best thing to do. I've seen different builds. I usually just build for like 100% or high percent crit chance because I feel like he does so much damage on the crit that you can one-shot certain boards. And I've seen him do really well with Radiant items like Radiant IE, Radiant Red Buff. So I usually prio putting Infinity Edge and Red Buff on him, and then I build like one last item that's either like an attack speed or a crit item. So here I just put like I put Last Whisper because even though it's like a little bit plus delta, the reason it's like plus delta is you don't really need to prioritize Shred because Aphelios does Shred naturally, right? So he does a 20% Sunder. It's not the best, so you eventually want to make an Even Shot or a Last Whisper, but I usually just put it because with the IE it's a good pairing for like the crit chance, but you could build pretty much any of these with the IE Red Buff and it's probably going to be really good. The next comp, which probably you people have seen a bunch. Ooh, actually, I want to switch this around. We'll come back to this. I think the next comp that I want to talk about is actually Yone. Kind of a spoiler. So the number 3 comp I would say is Yone. So in terms of just raw reroll, Yone is just the same category as Aphelios, right? It's really strong if you can tempo it or if you get a spat. Because if you get a Reaper spat, you can play 4 Reaper really easily. If you get an Umbral spat, you can play 4 or 6 Umbral really easily. The thing about Yone that's really busted is that he's very good at cheesing. He's very good at like, I'm not necessarily gonna win this battle, but my Yone will just dive the backline and kill the carry before we even get started. And that happens a lot because Yone targets like weakest opponent, right? So, or lowest health, so he'll just like dive the backline. And like the thing is, it's not like the same as like in set 10 with Jax where he would dive the backline and hit them once and then go away. It's like the Yone kind of like hangs out there for a while. He just kind of like lingers in the backline. So you have to really position against the Yone in order to like dodge it. But a lot of people, especially early set now, it's very easy to cheese them. And that's why it's kind of falling off a little bit or falling out of favor, because I think people are getting better at positioning around it, right? Instead of putting like, you know, a strong unit next to a weak unit and then the Yone dashes the weak unit and starts attacking the strong unit once he kills the weak unit. You kind of have to separate your strong units from your weak units to always make sure the Yone is going in the wrong direction, if that makes sense. And also, Just in terms of items, he's very strong with Titans. Titans is probably his best item, right? So if you look at the TFT stats, like it says like Duelist Crown. That's obviously if you're playing him on a Duelist board, because yeah, like sure it'll be busted, but typically you're making Titans. I think the best is like double Titans. You can make like attack speed items or even a Last Whisper. I've seen QSS. I've kind of fallen out of favor of making QSS. I usually just go Titans Hodge, and I'm pretty happy with that. If I don't make Titans Hodge, I make Titans some kind of attack speed item, because attack speed is really nice on him, and some kind of healing item, and that's usually okay. In terms of different renditions of the Yone board, the 4 Reaper version is probably the weakest, or not the weakest, it's just like the most volatile, because you're playing a lot of trash on your board, right? You're playing Kindred, you're playing Kha'Zix, you're playing Malphite, right? These things give you some buffs. They give you Heavenly, they give you the 4 Reaper, but they're kind of like 3 useless units in a way. A lot of times, like, you know, you can switch the Malphite for an Ornn, and it's just a better tank, and you lose like the Heavenly bonus, but it doesn't matter that much if you're playing like 4 Reaper. Like, you don't need the Heavenly like extra crit chance and the extra little bit of armor, because like the quality of Ornn as a unit is just so much better. But typically you want to play flexibly. You can play a lot more flexibly if you play 4 Reaper. I've heard like if you play 2 Reaper, I've heard 2 Reaper 6 Umbral is the better way to play the comp. I haven't had much experience because people are always forcing Yone, so I never find myself in a good Yone spot to play and to experiment with the comp. But the 6 Umbral is said to be better just because you have higher quality of units, right? You're playing a Silas that gets more buffs, you're playing a Yorick, which, you know, is not the best, but you're playing a Set if you can get the Set. You have an Umbral spat, you can put on the Kayn, and you can play Annie for Invoker. That helps like your whole board. It gives a little bit of a mana buff for your whole board, and it helps the Elune that you would probably be rolling for the Yone and the Elune, right? So it's just a matter of like the higher quality units offsets the extra damage you would get with the Reaper. But of course the 4 Reaper version is also fine. I've seen people play it and do extremely well with it. So now we're gonna go to the number 2 comp. This one has been taking over by storm. I actually played a bunch of this. You didn't see it on stream because I was playing off stream, but I was hard forcing Tristana for a little nugget because everybody else was playing around 3-cost rerolls. The thing with 3-cost rerolls is it's really hard to play a 3-cost reroll if you're the only reroller, because if you're the only reroller, you won't do enough damage to negatively impact the rest of the lobby, and everybody will just level up and go 9. And then they will get all legendary units, and they will outcap you because you're wasting all your gold trying to hit these 3 costs. The other thing is efficient rolling, right? A lot of these boards with the 3-cost rerolls, they're not something like Country last set, where you're buying like 5 different 3 costs and rolling for all of them. A lot of times you really only care about 1 or 2 3 costs, and you're hoping to like splash in a 4 cost. It's not super efficient rolling unless the whole lobby is rolling with you. Because, or at least there's another person in the lobby rolling with you, because you want to thin out the pool, right? Like if I buy Tristanas, it makes it easier to hit Volibears, and if I buy Volibears, it's easier to hit Tristanas because there's less in the pool, right? If someone else is going Yone, if someone else is going Aphelios, then all of a sudden there's not many Aphelios in the pool, there's not many Threshes in the pool, there's not many Yones or Elunes in the pool, and you're making the pool generally with less units, so your odds of hitting the units that you want are better. That's why like reroll lobbies help reroll lobbies. So if there's like 2 or 3 rerollers in your lobby, the best strat a lot of the time is just, okay, I'm just gonna force a reroll because it'll be way easier to hit a 3 cost than it will to hit a 4 cost, because they're not thinning out the 4 cost pool, they're thinning out the 3 cost pool. So monkey see monkey do, we're all gonna play 3 cost reroll, and that's what ends up happening a lot of the time. Tristana is probably the one that best counters the other 3-cost rerollers, is what I found early. So I started hard forcing it because people weren't playing Tristana. They were like trying to like double contest Bard or double contest Yone, which we'll talk about Bard after. So for me, I was like, okay, I'll just climb a bunch of LP playing Tristana. Now everybody plays Tristana. Everybody caught on that this is probably one of the most broken comps. That's why it's on number 2. You have such high roll potential because if you hit a Duelist +1, you can play 8 Duelists, and that's really strong. There's the Duelist Augment that's really strong. The what is it? The one that stacks the Duelist. They just nerfed it. It was broken, right? If you got that, it was like easy win. And this Tristana unit, you can build her multiple ways, but basically Volibear is really busted since PvE, that he's like this unkillable tank if you just build him with some like generic items. And Tristana just jumps around, so she often like takes aggro and de-aggro, so it's really hard to kill her. And then she also just like fucking one-shots units, right? So this is the full crit build for Tristana. There's many different builds you can do. I'm not sure which one's the best. I usually do something like this, where I go 1 healing, IE, and Last Whisper or Sunder Gun, as I sometimes call it on stream when I'm like focused. Basically what you do is she can jump in. This gives her 100% crit if you give her the Hodge. So she's guaranteed to crit. And then the Last Whisper basically makes it so that they take 30% less. They lose 30% armor, so you have the sundering built in, right? And then Volibear, because Volibear is an AP unit, so a lot of his abilities, they're all on AP scaling. Titans is his best item by far, and then you can give him Morello, as well as some sort of healing. This is like the max cap version of the board if you have 6 duelists. If you have a duelist emblem, you just put it on Diana, and then you just play 1 extra duelist, which is the Yasuo, so always hold on to the Yasuo Darius. Early game, you can play around Yasuo Darius. If you have a Darius 2, you can just item hold all the Volibear items or the Tristana items on the Darius until you can sell them. And then also, like, if you make a Hodge early, like, you can put on Volibear and just carry Volibear if you don't hit the Tristana and try and go 9 and play around Irelia. That's totally fine. If you don't have Irelia, you put in Yasuo. Like, that's the other duelist. And then what you're doing is you're playing towards the extra speed boost from Dragon Lords, so you play 3 Dragon Lords, and then you also have Seijin if you play the Wukong, and Heavenly, which gives your whole board a little bit of HP and a little bit of attack damage, which is just good to have. The other items, I've seen other items. This is another rendition of items. Your items can be pretty flexible. You can just make Tristana like an attack speed demon, right? Give her red buff for the anti-heal, Runehands, and DB. It's a good item combination. Volibear, another really good item on Volibear is Crown, so the Crown Guard. So a lot of times if I have like extra items that I don't really know what to do with and I need to redo them in a different way, I'll like make other AP items. Like Volibear is good with Crown Guard, he's good with Adaptive Helm, etc. And you can kind of like build it around that. You don't even need to make a healing item on Volibear sometimes, because if you just stack him with a lot of AP, his passive skill heals him almost as much, like enough that you can like get a top 4, and then you still need Shred, so then just Diana could hold the tank items. Diana or Lee Sin. If you're going for Diana 3, then Diana 3. In terms of items, Tristana is like kind of awkward, right? Like I think attack speed items do better than the full crit items nowadays, right? I'm looking at these things. If you don't know how to read stats, what this means is like if this is the average placement, the average delta means having this item on a 3-star Tristana improves your average by -2.5. So it means it's really good. So for example, this comp from people playing it in the 4,000 games of people that played it in Emerald Plus, if you buy a gold collector, then this average drops to a 3.4, which is like means like it's a better placement on a scale of like 1 being first and 8 being the worst, right? I should have explained it probably in the other one. Hopefully people stuck around and didn't get too confused. So a lot of times you want to build like things. Obviously gold collector is really good because it's like a better IE and it gives you a bunch of gold to reroll. But like, you know, Runehands and these, they're all kind of good, right? They're all negative delta, which means that they're all like slammable. So, you know, it's okay. You just don't want to make Jinsu, because Jinsu is always usually bad or falls off. And finally, speaking about Jinsus, the most dominant reroll that I've ever seen, this thing's so fucking busted, is Bard reroll. So Bard reroll, basically, you just play around Bard, and you need double Guinsoo and Gunblade, right? A lot of people just hard force this, even if they have a single Bard. I don't think that's the way it should be. That's a sign when things are a little bit overtuned. In general, like, you should never really commit to a reroll unless you natural a couple of the copies, because you want to decrease the chance of you missing, right? Like, you never want to have like 0 copies of Bard, make a Guinsoo and say, I'll just roll on 7 for Bard 3. It's like you're probably not going to hit, and there's a high chance you go 8th if the rest of the lobby is playing properly. Like, if the rest of the lobby misses, that's fine. The main thing I want to talk about with these comps, like this comp, the Yone comp, and the Tristana comp, is that all of them are stable around Bard, around 2-star units, right? So even if you don't hit a Bard 3 and you hit a Bard 2, oftentimes you can make it to a top 4 if you play your spot well, right? If you play it smart, right, having the mythic core with Bard, you can kind of play towards Hui, Lilia. So if you hit a Bard 2 and you realize like, oh, I might not hit Bard 3, there's still a chance that you can like tempo level. It's the same with like Yone, right? You can just play around Kayn and level and then just play towards legendaries. And the same with like Tristana. Like well, Tristana a little bit less, but Tristana is just really strong, and generally like it's okay to go for 3-star that. But even with Tristana, you can just like say, okay, well fuck it, I didn't hit Tristana. Like as long as I hit Volibear, like you have to hit one of them, right? Whichever one you hit, it's like, okay, I'll just level and I'll try and play towards like Irelia 2, and I'll just put the extra items on Irelia 2 instead of the Tristana, right? But there's some options with these ones where you're stable at a 2 cost, where you'll kill a bunch of units, you won't lose too much HP, or you'll win a bunch of fights in stage 4. And then in stage 5, you can decide, okay, I have a bunch of gold now. Am I rolling or am I leveling, right? Depending on how it goes, right? If you win, lose, and it's like, okay, I'll just resend and I'll roll. But if you have like, you're win streaking, it's like, okay, I'm win streaking, I have a bunch of HP, I'll level, I'll play towards like 8, 9, and then I'll hit better quality units, and I'll just like pivot off of the standard reroll, which is a really good option, right? So Bard has those options, because starting early you're very strong because you have this Kale that basically gives you the free Sunder and Shred. You can play around Bard, and you can play this version, which is like a 4 bruiser version. I think this was like the OG version, like the original version, because you basically have Story Weaver in, you have Mythic in to give like the buff to the Bard and the Kog'Maw, and then you have the 4 bruiser for like a strong front line. You can play like a more mixed board where instead of playing 4 bruiser, you just kind of play like whatever extra unit you have, and you can play an Annie because Annie's like a busted frontline unit, so the quality of the unit is a little bit better. And you can play this version in case you want to play this. If you're playing this version, you might not even need like the Galio. You can play like a different Story Weaver. A lot of times you start this comp mid game with a Garen. You can keep the Garen in. You can play towards 5 Mythic as well, because 5 Mythic leans really well into going 7 Mythic if you level up, and you can play away. Alright, if you natural away while rolling on 7, which happens sometimes, you can just replace the Lilia with the Way. In this version, you don't even need Nico. You can put Nautilus in the front. What I'm saying is, besides like the Bard, Tahm Kench core, there's a lot of different options, which is what makes this comp so strong, right? If this comp only had one option, like one way to play it, it wouldn't be as strong as it is, right? Here's a version that, okay, oopsie daisy, I didn't hit Galio because the whole lobby's playing Story Weaver. That happens a lot. Well, no panic. Keep your Garen in. Put in Nautilus. Nautilus is pretty broken. Give him a mana item, right? If you give Nautilus a mana item, he goes nuts, because Nautilus cast is like this huge stun. So it's very strong, especially if you're playing like a unit like Bard where you need to ramp up. He's very good, Nautilus, at delaying the fight. So you can just play 5 Mythic with a Nautilus. Fuck it. Go 9. Play 7 Mythic. You know what I mean? It's just so insane, right? Oh, I got Three's Company. Guess what? There's a Three's Company board. You want to have a bunch of tanky frontline units? Why don't we play Bard, Soraka, Zoe? And now we have Altruist, which gives us extra stats, right? And we'll just play a Tahm Kench and a Nico, and we'll just play this board. This board's like a newer board. I haven't been able to try it yet, so I can't tell you how strong it is. But this board's also fucked up, because with like, I think this is specific for like Three's Company, right? But this is like stacking a bunch of extra stats. You get the extra Arcanist boost, you get the extra Altruist boost, and then when you level up, you're even more flexible, because now you can play like a random Rakan on your board and he'll be really strong, right? You can play a random other unit, another random like other bruisers on your board, right? And level up, right? But the thing is, it's just really strong. Just as a last note, so just to tell you, like, you really have to make Guinsoo's. Guinsoo's like increases your placement by so much, but look how strong the placement is of this, right? If you go like Guinsoo, it's averaging like a 3.3. If you have like double Guinsoo already, you're averaging like a 3.2. I think if you put this at 2-star, it's like a 5.3, right? Which is still pretty good. Like, that means like even if you miss, you're probably still going to be able to sometimes go 5th, right? And if you're playing a comp where like the worst you can place is like in the 5s, like even if you hard miss, that's pretty good, right? And if you look at all the stats, I think the stats kind of line up. Like Yone, without items, it's like a 3.6, right? What you care about is if this number is under 4, right? The Tristana one is a little bit awkward, right? Because Tristana, sometimes you can just go 8. It's really contingent on hitting the units. So, well, what makes this one shine is a lot of times the augments, right? Like extended duel. You have you can take Gargantuan, Inspiring Epitaph. If you hit the Duelist Crown, which is really strong because it just insta spikes you. Gifts from the Fallen is really good. Extended Duel, Unified. Like, a lot of these just like greatly increase your spot. So I think another one that was really good was the Combat Caster, if I recall, but I think it fell off a little bit. But Tristana is just really broken if you ever play it. I'm a huge believer in it. Aphelios is really strong because you can also level. It's just the Zoe one that I'm unsure about, but I wanted to mention it just so that you guys knew about it. So the tier list kind of looks more like this. Maybe Yone's, like Yone and Tristana, I don't know which is better because I've seen Yone fall off a little bit, and this Aphelios is now a little bit better because of the 7 faded. But it would be something more like this, and then this guy is, oh sorry, let me just move all of these off, right? And this is somewhere like here. And then the Tristana, it's like, a lot of times like the Volibear is equally as important. But if you can manage to get to a spot where you hit both of them, then it's like somewhere, then it's definitely like up here, right? It's just like the Tristana, you have less of a chance to like go 9 and do crazy stuff. Alright, so that is my list. So then next week should be the actual patches, because patches are every 2 weeks for the set. So next week will be a patch review, and maybe I will show 1 or 2 guides basically every Monday. Today was a little bit late because I was busy yesterday at a doctor's appointment. So next week, basically every Monday there'll be something kind of like, not like necessarily a tier list, but something akin to a tier list and a patch review that will kind of say like, okay, this is what might change, this is what might be strong, etc. This one, it's just a B patch, so on B patch days I will just like kind of say, okay, here's a little update on like something that you might be seeing a lot of and why it's happening and what's so good about it. Alright, see you next time. Starting tomorrow, we'll be back to regular VODs for the rest of the week until next week, next Monday. Alright, bye-bye. Oh, let's make sure to like and subscribe.